All right, then we now have the teams for Ireland against France. What is going to ultimately, you think, be a title decider at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin, where 2 years ago, well, it amounted to being a massive win for Ireland in what went on to be a Grand Slam campaign, and the men in green will be hoping that it's going to be the same. Obviously, here on FR UK Rugby, and thank you for watching, we've got a little bit more of a French focus. So we're going to be looking at Fabien Galthie's 23-man squad, the 7-1 split, and the relative strengths or weaknesses of this French team going up against Ireland. Joe Worsley is helping me do that. Joe, you're in the UK then? Just looking, you're in your office in the UK.
I am, and it's actually sunny. But
It's lovely, isn't it? It's
yeah.
very. How are Brive doing? Just very briefly, what's going on with Brive?
Grenoble playing very well. They're 12 points ahead of everybody else in Pro D2. Now there's a gang of us chasing that second place. Second place gets you straight into the semi-finals, which is a big deal at home. So it's an important thing to do. So there's 4 teams wrestling for that second place. We're one of them. Big game this weekend. I say this weekend, Friday night lights. Tomorrow against Mont-de-Marsan. And then there's a couple of weeks without a game while they concentrate on watching Six Nations rugby.
Well, that's what we're focused on right now. And the headline with this French side that Fabien Galthie has announced. I mean, firstly, there's the big names back in as expected. Romain Ntamack is in. Damien Penaud is in. Emmanuel Meafu is into the 23 on the bench, which is a big boost. So a lot of experience and a lot of talent coming back into the side. But it's the 7-1 split that's the big talking point, Joe. Were you expecting that? It turns out the Italy experiment wasn't an experiment. It was a test run.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There are French teams that do this. And the polyvalence, the players able to play in different positions really helps it in the back line. You've got several combinations. Bielberry, Ramos, Ntamack, Dupont. These guys can flutter around anywhere. So you've got the flexibility. But if you take 2 back injuries, obviously that's the risk. But the gain for France, I think, is mobility of the pack, because the Ireland pack is super fit. Even the front row can run and run and run. Their Bronco test, for example, which is the test in rugby that everyone does, is the Irish tend to be scoring the highest on those fitness tests. And it comes, you see that there's not anyone in that Irish pack who's not able to run all day. So that's probably where they want to take France down, I would say. And having nearly 2 whole packs in the squad is going to help to negate that.
It's a risk reward. It's a trade-off. And it only seems that, I guess it's only a little bit different from a 6-2 split, which has become the norm for France. And Ireland are doing that in this game as well. But just that extra lack of option in the back line. I'll tell you what, my biggest potential issue with it, Joe, is more that you're going to compromise how you use your best talent and main playmaker in Antoine Dupont. He seems like he's going to be the guy that has to be moved if there's an injury that they're not expecting.
I think when Leinster beat Toulouse in the European Cup final a few years ago, similar situation, Dupont had to move to fly half because of the way they picked the squad. Now, if you got to shift him out of where his natural 9 position again, that could really damage the squad. But I think Galthie has talked in the press about the risk this carries. He understands the risk. But I think 2 years ago, this Irish team took them to somewhere where they just couldn't stay in the race. They just dropped off. And that memory is probably driving a lot of what's happening now. Ball in play in top 14s less. It's a more physical game, probably less running than URC and international rugby. But France's advantage is going to be accelerating the play and physicality. Irish advantage is going to be just relentless execution, leading to the opposition getting so tired. Eventually, they're going to make that mistake, which means Ireland will pounce on it. That's kind of Irish USP over the Farrell years, put it that way.
Yeah, that game 2 years ago you referenced, that some of the stats from that match were unreal. There was just an incredibly low number of lineouts because neither team wanted to kick the ball off the pitch. And there was actually really quite a few scrums, especially I think in the first half. I think there was maybe only 1 or 2 scrums because there was 0 handling errors from Ireland. To emphasise your point that if the conditions are good and these 2 teams are on their game, then you could have really long passages of play. The Dupont law having been corrected, forwards are going to have to keep on moving.
Yeah, so that is, I think, what the French are thinking about. Obviously, the Irish, that's what they do. They haven't done that quite as well, I think, the Six Nations than they did, especially 2 years ago before that World Cup. They were in a real good form, making so few errors. The opposition had so few errors coming their way that playing against Ireland was so difficult. They gave you no air whatsoever. But now there's a little bit more error and less threat in some of their attacking play, especially. It's still very good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing it completely, but I think there might be a couple more opportunities for a team like France to leap on than there were 2 years ago. But on the flip side, the Irish have been getting better during the Six Nations, and I'm sure that they've been teeing up their training to really hit this match full throttle because they're going to have to.
Just on the actual selection, I mentioned Emmanuel Meafu is back in. I'm sure that there was a temptation there to start him. What difference can that guy make?
He can make a phenomenal difference. He's one of the players who can give you that offload or that go forward and fast ball that for the French team makes a massive difference. So the Irish team will be relentlessly tackling in twos, trying to have two men to take down the physical threat of people like Meafu, but someone like him has the nous and the ability to take on a line and to create that moment behind which Natamak, Dupont, all these players can just cut loose. So I think he will be very important when they come on, but he's not been chucked straight in the team. Fiku wasn't involved as well because he's not fit enough. He's played a game and a half. So they said to him, you're not fit enough. So this is again coming back to the point they want people involved who are fit and going to be able to hold that level that this game's going to bring to the party. I think the intensity is going to be off the hook in this Ireland-France game at the weekend.
Well, I mean, Yoram Moefana, it's amazing. He's only 24 and he's up to 40 odd caps now, but he seems to have stepped up a level, particularly in that Italy game. That's probably as good as I've seen him play.
Yeah, he's one of the glue guys, isn't he? Yeah, he's one of the glue guys. Kind of does a lot of work. He can do brilliant things as well. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, he works his ass off. So he's one of the guys who, fitness-wise, would be able to stay in the game, and with Henshaw and people like that, be able to match them in terms of their work rate, and that's what France will need. That's for sure.
I do think that's a potential relative area of weakness, though. Still, midfield when you look against Aki and Henshaw and the experience that they've got together.
Yeah.
In club days at Connacht, and then obviously many times for Ireland in more recent years.
No, but looking at that physicality those two bring, you've got Lowe coming in there. I think in terms of creating opportunities for Ireland, that's an opportunity they have there because Barassi, Moefana is a very good tackler, but Ntamak, Barassi, they're not lethal. In collisions, Penno, Bielberry, and again, not people who are destroying opposition defence-wise. I mean, all those guys are pretty good, but I think physically that's one area maybe the Irish could get some sort of go forward, just the physicality. People like Aki, people like Henshaw, and people like Lowe, if they arrive at the line, when you're holding defenders and getting one-on-ones for those guys arriving at full speed, that might be moments that the Irish find interesting behind.
I mean, the margins are going to be small. I think one potential area where France could swing it could be a 3-6 point opportunity, or it could be territory that could be vital, but is the scrum. And I just think Ireland have got Cian Healy, who they don't seem to trust for more than 5-10 minutes, and he's in his final game at home, at least for Ireland, maybe his final game of rugby, but at international level. But then Thomas Clarkson's young, and Rob Herring's there stepping up. Whereas you look at that France bench, Marchand, by Aldegheri, Meafu, could be a difference.
I mean, the scrum and the maul, we could say maybe. Scrum, certainly the technical side of things, that French pack looks more dangerous. That's for sure. And having a maul behind that as well. The Irish are very good at defending mauls. They created ways of doing it, and team unity allowing them to do it pretty well. But scrum time, yes, that could be a point of advantage. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure with one or two injuries, they've probably not got the depth, have they, that some other countries might have in terms of the props.
If you were in the coaching setups for either of these teams, what other areas would you target? Because I'm sort of thinking if I were Ireland, I might just dial up the high bombs a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Irish will want to have those long sequences of play, holding on to the ball. However, if they're not being as accurate with their game as they were 2 years ago, for example, and they start getting slow ball, through bad pass, someone being not in the right line, all these things happen at the moment, more than they did 2 years ago. That happens and they can go to their kicking game because traditionally the French aren't so good under the high ball, whereas Gaelic football, these boys all grow up playing it. To a man, pretty good at doing it. Lowe, someone who did not grow up doing that, is again pretty good in the air. So the accuracy of their kicking and the contesting in the air is a strength of the Irish. and they'd be foolish not to go for that in this game. You haven't got Burros, the Bordeaux fullback, playing. Somebody who can dominate high balls and counter-attack behind. So, again, that would be a real thing, an area that the Irish should be using against this French team. I know they like kicking long as well, but I'm sure that in this match there'll be contestables coming down the Ramos's neck.
Yeah, one of the guys that might be chucking up the bombs is Sam Prendergast. From a coaching perspective, how can you engineer positions where you might get guys like Miafu or Aldrit or just Antonio running at a young fly half whose defence has been questioned?
Yeah, it's quite a tricky one because you can have launch plays which can isolate a 10. If they don't hide him, for example. If the defence don't hide him somewhere on a wing, or even then you can isolate them, come back to them. There won't be that many strike plays. We were talking earlier about the lack of line-outs in the last game. Maybe there won't be that many opportunities like that. So a much bigger part of the game would just be if Pendergast is in the front line and the French are attacking the line, they'll be able to read they're very good at reading a weak tackler in the group of people in front and then putting the right player onto him. But I'd imagine Pendergast be in the backfield as soon as possible, to be fair.
I imagine he'll be sat back there for sure. How do you see this one going ultimately, Joe?
Honestly, I'm not sure. The French are desperate, and when they're desperate, they can pull things out of the bag. They had that shocker against England in their eyes. England did well to win that game, but the French did balls up a lot of opportunities. So that'll be playing on their mind. I'm sure they won't be doing that again. I think you'll see less opportunities come their way because Ireland are more efficient than England. And it's going to come down to the few opportunities France get. If they take them, brilliant for French. Now, the Irish, if they manage to maintain the best of their attacking game, best of their kicking game, I think it'll be them that wins.
I'm with you. I think Ireland by not a lot. But really, really interesting, Joe. But leave your comments down below, please. Give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe. And I must mention as well, if you haven't already, go and check out the brilliant chat with Manu Tuolangi, as relaxed and open as I've ever heard him and loving life. So that is on the channel as well. Joe, till next time, mate. Sweet.